Welcome to video number 1. Whenever I start a new project, I like to take a step back, considering what's the overall goals for this project and how can I break that down into a series of smaller, manageable chunks. Sometimes when you look at a project that's huge, that contains a lot of functionality and there's a lot going on, I like to break it down into smaller steps. It just makes it more manageable, makes it less imposing. And that's what I've done with this roadmap file. You'll notice I have a list of completed items, a list of to-do items, and I've broken down that overall functionality into a series of smaller steps. I'm going to be following along with this roadmap as I progress through the course, and I'm going to be using it as a guide. I plan to show this file at the start of every new video so you can get a feel for where we are within the course and how much work is left to be done. You'll note that the first thing on this list is to set up a file structure. So let's do that. So I've switched over. Here on the left you have my Finder, which shows the various files in my project. And on the right you have a rich text file, which breaks those down. It shows all the individual folders and files within them. So to go through it very briefly, this is the main root of the project. It basically contains the main files that our system will be using. Those include cart, our index, the IPN, which we'll talk about later. That's something that PayPal uses, a product page, and a success page. And then there are a couple additional text files, sort of utility files that I've included. There's the roadmap, which we just talked about. There's a resources.txt file. And this is where I'm going to place any links that I have talked about or will talk about in this course, just so they're easy for you to reference. And in addition, there are two database dumps. One is a dump which just contains content. This is the one I'm going to be using in the next video to populate our database. And the other one is a full dump of the database, including commands to create the tables we're going to be using. So this is just slightly faster if you want to skip my demonstration about how to set up the database manually using phpMyAdmin. In addition to these, there's this killer site screencast.esproj. You can ignore this file. It won't be included with the final source files. This is just a file that my text editor needs. And I have two folders. I have an app folder, which contains my models. And I have a views folder, which contains my views, and two include files, which contain a public header and footer. These are things that we'll be including and using repeatedly. And then we also have an init.php, and that'll be included on every file of our project. It'll include things like basic database settings, PHP constants, just anything that our project as a whole will need. And then finally we have a resources folder, and that includes CSS. So we have a style.css file and images. And in this particular case, I've included 6 product images, just samples for us to work with. And these images are taken online. If I go open my resources.txt file, this is where I got them from, publicdomainpictures.net. And basically that's a repository of open source pictures that are free for me to use. And so that's what I'll be using as images for the various products in this store. Well, now that I've given you an overview of what files I'm going to be using in this project, I'd suggest you do one of two things. Either go through and set up the project yourself and create all these files and folders manually. It doesn't need to contain anything, just blank files is fine. Alternatively, if you have access to the source files, you can go download those. I've included blank versions to make it easy for you to get up and running with this project. And the zip file will include all of these files empty and ready for you to get started working on this project. For product images, any 200 by 200 pixel image will work. So you can either download my source files or you can borrow images online and use those instead. Just be aware that most images online have some sort of copyright associated with them, and you may not be able to freely use them if you post this project live on the web.